Good afternoon. Today I'm going to be reviewing the H.G.P Diver 200M Mechaquartz. This watch is available from hgpwatches.com for €299. H.G.P stands for Homme Grenouille Paris. The brand was founded in France in 1970 and they produced dive pieces in the 1970s and the 1980s, then the brand died out. In 2023, H.G.P came back to life, and this H.G.P Diver 200M Mechaquartz is a heritage reissue of the dive pieces they produced in the 1970s and the 1980s. So firstly, let's look at the box that the watch comes in, and then I'll talk you through the specifications of the piece. So the watch comes in a canvas and leather travel case, and that is protected by this cardboard box. So you remove the travel case from the cardboard box. This is the travel case. As you can see, nice heavy weave to the canvas fabric and contrasts with the tan leather. Now the leather is genuine leather, it's not vinyl or PU leather, and it's embossed with the H.G.P brand logo to a good standard. So it has a strap which secures the lid. Flawless stitching around the perimeter, both on the top side and the underside, as you can see. Very high quality finishing, nice heavy canvas fabric to it, which is very aesthetically pleasing, with a denim colour blue. And of course the interior is also very well finished. Now inside the pocket we have this piece of cardboard which gives instructions for removing the beads of rice bracelet, which uses quick release spring bars, and the bracelet is made by NSA, which I'll talk about. So this piece of card, which is shaped, goes in between the bracelet and clasp and the case back, and it prevents the bracelet clasp rubbing against the case back, scuffing and scratching it when it's inside the travel case. So good presentation, good quality, genuine leather and canvas travel case. So with regards to the items you get with the piece, you also get this fabric keyring, and as you can see it says Homme Grenouille Paris because that's what H.G.P stands for, and on the reverse it has an embroidered G Monin France and H.G.P. So the case used in this piece is the iconic Monin 844 case, which was made by Georges Monin from 1979. Originally Georges Monin used the 844 case for Hoyer pieces from 1979 through to the 1980s. Georges Monin produced Hoyer dive pieces from 1979 through to the 1980s in France, and then Hoyer relocated production to Switzerland, but originally Hoyer dive pieces were made in France rather than Switzerland. And they used the iconic 844 case, as did a plethora of dive watch brands in the 1970s and 1980s. For example, CWC used the 844 Monin case in the RN Diver, which succeeded the Rolex 5517 Milsub, which was military issued, and also H.G.P used it in the 1970s and the 1980s. So this piece is a faithful heritage reissue using the original genuine Georges Monin 844 case. So you also get this sticker which has Homme Grenouille Paris as well. And you also get this card, and as you can see this is the warranty card and certificate of authenticity. Has the website hgpwatches.com, and also it has space for the serial number of the piece, the reference number, date of purchase and the retailer, which is H.G.P, because this watch is available for purchase directly from H.G.P in France, hgpwatches.com. So 2 years international warranty is good. Now, usually I do not size my bracelets, as you'll know from my previous reviews, but in this case I have, because the beads of rice bracelet is very long on this piece to fit around a wetsuit or even up to a 9-inch wrist. Even with my large 8-inch wrist, I have removed 5 full links from the beads of rice bracelet to get the perfect fit. Now, with all the links in the bracelet, this piece weighs 148 grams, which is a pleasant surprise because it is a large 42mm piece. By removing 5 links, I have reduced the heft by 10 grams down to 138, but the maximum heft of the piece with all the links up to a 9-inch wrist size is 148 grams. So with regards to the specifications of the piece, we have a 42mm case diameter. We have a lug-to-lug measurement of 47mm, a thickness of 12.1mm, and a lug width of 20mm. The beads of rice bracelet tapers on 20mm at the lugs down to 16mm at the 2-button push clasp. And as you can see, the 2-button push clasp is signed to a high standard with an embossed NSA emblem, because the bracelet and also the clasp are not made by H.G.P. They are made by NSA. NSA made bracelets and clasps from the 1960s to the 1990s in Switzerland. And they are period correct for a 1970s or a 1980s H.G.P piece. And of course, this is a faithful heritage reissue of the H.G.P divers from the 1970s and 1980s before the brand died out. So NSA made bracelets for a plethora of brands, including Doxa and H.G.P. And then what happened was in the 1990s, they ceased production of their bracelets and clasps. The bracelet clasps were often branded. For example, Doxa would brand them with Doxa, but in fact they were made by NSA, not by Doxa themselves. So this is a genuine NSA bracelet and clasp. And as you can see, the clasp is a work of art. Look at the longitudinal ribs, the way they catch the light, the luster, the way the ribs refract the light. It's just incredible. And we've got 5 micro adjustments. It's just a work of art. Now, the other thing I like about the Beads of Rice bracelet is the centre links aren't mirror polished as per Beads of Rice bracelets used on Doxa pieces, for example. They're brushed satin finished, and they also have ribs in each of the centre links. Now, the ribs catch the light, and it's just very aesthetically pleasing. The luster is gorgeous, and it's a nice detail because it gives it a tool watch aesthetic rather than being mirror polished as per a Jubilee bracelet or a Beads of Rice bracelet with mirror polished centre links. The brushed satin finished centre links with the ribs give it a tool watch aesthetic. The other correct decision they've made is brushed satin finishing the flanks, because often bracelets are mirror polished on the flanks to give it a dress watch aesthetic as per a Jubilee bracelet. This gives it a tool watch aesthetic, and there's plenty of meat. Look at the thickness of the links. Very robust, high build quality. So we've got a flat sapphire crystal with clear AR coating on the underside. And the clear anti-reflective coating does an outstanding job of reducing the glare and the highly reflective nature of this silver mirror polished handset. Originally, the H.G.P divers from the 1970s and 1980s had Mercedes handsets. Now, they've updated this because if you look at the hour hand, you can see it's not a Mercedes hand. They've infilled the centre of it, which would have been Mercedes formats in the 1970s and 1980s. This is actually a beneficial enhancement because it allows for a larger area or a larger plot of C3 superluminary to be applied. So we've now got more lume than on the original 1970s version, which used tritium. So printed indices are C3 superluminova. The triangle in the aluminium bezel insert is fully lumed with C3, which is inlaid into the aluminium bezel insert. 60-minute ticks as per a CWC RN diver, or alternatively the Rolex 5517 mil sub. So it does give it that vintage aesthetic of a 1970s or 1980s piece. And of course the iconic 844 Monin case with a V-shaped cutout for the recessed crown, and also we've got those large mirror polished bevels which mark the transition between the brushed satin finished tops of the lugs and the longitudinal brushed satin finished flanks. So original case profiling, 42mm gives large wrist presence, but it's relatively perfect lug to lug measurement of 47. The bezel is solid 316L grade stainless steel, gear tooth profile to it, brushed satin finish to the gear tooth profile, and on the top edge we've got a large chamfer which is mirror polished to a perfect standard. I like the large tool profile to the gear tooth bezel. It gives it a real tool watch aesthetic or a military aesthetic as per the CWC RN diver, which succeeded the Rolex 5517 mil sub in the 1980s. So nice tool profile to it. I love the way the large mirror polished bevel catches the light, chamfer, catches the light. Now they've made the correct decision by using an aluminium bezel insert rather than ceramic or sapphire because this is a heritage reissue piece. Now, originally, in the 1970s and 1980s, H.G.P uses Bakelite's bezel inserts, but of course Bakelite had a tendency to crack and become scuffed and scratched because it wasn't a very hard and scratch-resistant material as per sapphire, crystal and ceramic, which are now the industry standards. But rather than using Bakelite, which has now been succeeded by aluminium and ceramic as a bezel insert material, they've opted for aluminium. Now, the silver minute ticks and also the Arabic numerals catch the light and they give it a vintage aesthetic, and I think they've made the correct decision by using aluminium rather than updating it to ceramic. It does look like a vintage 1970s or 1980s dive piece, so very aesthetically pleasing. And I like the way the flat sapphire crystal has a bevel which projects slightly above the edge of the aluminium bezel insert, and it catches the light. When I tilt it at an oblique angle, you can see the edge of the sapphire crystal catching the light. It's just delightful, absolutely gorgeous. So I'll show you the case back. Solid 316L grade stainless steel, longitudinal brushed satin finish in the centre section. Now, if you look at the engraving in the centre, you can see it has 844 engraved in it because it's an 844 genuine Georges Monin case, and it's made in France. And we have the 316L grade stainless steel engraved, 20 ATM, and that this is a Mechaquartz. So the circumference is mirror polished. It does have a bubble back profile to it, but it is low profile. The longitudinal brushed satin finishing to the centre section is very smooth, so this is an incredibly comfortable bubble back case back. The benefit of this being the quartz powered version rather than the automatic is it is thinner and more low profile. And this is also the benefit of it using a flat sapphire crystal rather than a double domed sapphire crystal. This piece is only 12.1 millimeters, but it is 200 meters water resistant. The milled slots are perfectly finished. No sharp edges, no burrs to the milled slots around the circumference. The mirror polishing is perfection personified, and beautiful luster to the longitudinal brushed satin finishing. So quality of the engraving is exceptional. High definition, no sharp edges to it. The quality of the polishing and the mirror and the brushed satin finishing is really high quality. The underside to the case is mirror polished to a flawless standard. No sharp edges to the undercuts to the flanks or the crown guards. The crown guards have a nice chamfer to them, which is brushed satin finished, and they've deburred the tips of the crown guards, and also the tips of the lugs have a nice chamfer, so no sharp points to the tips of the lugs. The quality of the finishing to the iconic Monin 844 case is perfection personified. No sharp edges, no burrs, the mirror polishing is high tier level, the brushed satin finishing is high tier level. Bear in mind this is a low tier piece costing €299, but we're getting high tier level finishing, €10,000 price point finishing on the Monin case, which is made in France. So let's look at the clasp. As I've detailed, this is made by NSA, and NSA make their bracelets and clasps in Switzerland. And as you can see, it's embossed with the NSA original emblem used from the 1960s through to the 1990s. Beautiful luster to the longitudinal brushed satin finishing, and the ribs, which are embossed, catch the light. It's just a work of art. Longitudinal brushed satin finishing to the flanks gives it a tool watch aesthetic, and the two button push triggers are also brushed satin finished. 5 micro adjustment holes is optimum. One can easily get the correct fit. In the absence of half links in the beads of rice bracelet, which uses push pins as per the original from the 1970s and 1980s, you can get the perfect fit, and as you can see, I've got it on position 5 of 6 to get the perfect fit because there are no half links in the beads of rice bracelet. Let's look at the internals. Again, it's engraved with the NSA emblem, as you can see, and then it says steel inox 316L because it's solid 316L grade stainless steel. Beautiful luster to the longitudinal brushed satin finishing, no sharp edges to the top side, underside and flanks, and the corners of the centre section aren't sharp, so no sharp edges, no burrs whatsoever. High quality finishing. Let's check the hinge pins. Minimal play, nice tight tolerances, no additional lateral, side to side, longitudinal or up and down play in the left hand hinge pin. Articulates smoothly but doesn't feel stiff, it doesn't kink, and yet there's no additional play. Nice tight quality control, good interference fit of the pin going through the end link in the beads of rice bracelet. Let's check the centre pin. Opens and closes smoothly with good articulation. Just bear with me, I'll get the camera to focus. No lateral side-side play, no up and down play, no longitudinal play. Nice tight interference fit of the centre pin. Let's check the right pin. Again, articulates smoothly, no lateral side-side play, no up and down play, no longitudinal play. Nice and smooth, good interference fit. So this is the benefit of an NSA bracelet. They made bracelets from the 1960s to the 1990s in Switzerland. High quality beads of rice bracelets. The hinge pins are interference fits. Quality control, builds quality materials are all 10 out of 10. Outstanding. Not only is it visually a work of art, but the quality of the finishing is exceptional. This is €299. We're looking at a low tier piece with a high tier piece bracelet and clasp. So I'll give you a wrist shot and you can see how it fits on my 8-inch wrist. Now, as I've detailed, I have removed 5 full links, so bear that in mind. This will easily fit up to a 9-inch wrist. Even removing 5 full links, I can still fit an index finger beneath the bracelet and clasp at all times. This allows for wrist expansion when one is active or when one's wrist expands. It is the correct sizing method. You should always be able to slide an index finger beneath the bracelet and clasp to allow for wrist expansion. I've also got it on position 5 of 6 to get the perfect fit. Now I can tell you, this is one of the most comfortable bracelets I have ever experienced on my channel. I have reviewed hundreds of watches, including high tier pieces with the very best of bracelets such as Rolex Oyster bracelets and Rolex Jubilee bracelets, which are some of the best Swiss quality bracelets. This NSA beads of rice bracelet is not only aesthetically pleasing due to the brushed satin finishing to the beads of rice center links with ribs, but the taper is perfection personified. 20 to 16 is the perfect taper. As I've detailed, the NSA clasp is a work of art with the longitudinal ribs. As you can see, beautiful luster to it. No sharp edges to it, to the top side, underside and flanks. The end doesn't have sharp edges. The corners on all 4 corners are deburred and chamfered to perfection. It's a high grade bracelet and clasp. Articulates very smoothly. It actually looks and feels like a Jubilee bracelet, and the 20 to 16 is the correct choice. They could have used a 22 to 18 because this is a large head of the piece with a Monin 844 case, but I like the balance of a 20 to 16 with the nice proportions of the clasp. So, benefit of it having a 20 to 16 rather than 22 to 18 taper is it reduces the heft of the piece. This is 148 grams with all the links, but I've removed 5 full links. That's reduced it by 10 grams down to only 138. It's exceptional. Very unusual to get a large 42mm dive piece which is 200 meters water resistant with a solid bracelet and milled clasp at only 138 grams. This feels perfectly balanced. Now just look at the curved undercuts of the 844 Monin case. Minimal gap underneath the tips of the lugs. Nice large mirror polished bevels which mark the transition. Curved profile to the undercut, wraps around the wrist. This does not sit on the wrist like a large 42mm diameter slab of 316L grade stainless steel. So not only is it comfortable, the feel-good factor is fantastic. The comfort level is fantastic. The proportions are fantastic. The lug-to-lug measurement is very close to perfection. It's 47, so it's 1mm below the sweet spot. I always refer to 48 as being the perfect lug-to-lug measurement, regardless of whether you have a 6 to 7 inch wrist or a 7 to 8 inch wrist, respectively. So at 47, it's slightly below the 48mm sweet spot, but it is perfect for the 42mm proportions of the 844 Monin case. Lug width is correct. The height of it is low profile. Now, I also refer to in my reviews, 13mm or below is the sweet spot. A dive piece will easily slip underneath a shirt cuff if you wear business shirts. If it's 13 or less, this is only 12.1. Just think about that. 200 meters water resistant, but 12.1mm thick. Flat sapphire crystal, flat profile to the bubble back caseback. One of the lowest profile 200 meter dive pieces I have reviewed on my channel. Minimal gap to the curved undercut, and the end links in the beads of rice bracelet articulate very smoothly, so nice snug fit to the end of the bracelet. Just fantastic. This watch looks sublime from every angle. The legibility is exceptional. The clear AR coating does a good job. The matte dial is not glossy and reflective as per an enamel black dial or sunburst dial. Printed indices are matte, so they've got a nice contrast with the matte black dial. The C3 has a perfect colour tone match between the handset, the indices and also the loomed triangle on the aluminium bezel insert. I love the profile of the gear tooth bezel, which is brushed satin finish on the gear teeth, but that large mirror polished chamfer to it also complements the large mirror polished bevels to the Monin 844 case. Just gorgeous. Feel good factor is good. Comfort level is good, very well balanced on the 20 to 16 beads of rice NSA bracelet, and at 42mm it is surprisingly comfortable to wear for long periods of time, such as 8 to 12 hours per day. But I would say to you, if you have a 6 to 7 inch wrist, you may find the 42mm 844 Monin case to have too much wrist presence to be comfortable. You may find it to dominate the wrist too much. If you have a larger wrist of 7 to 8 inches plus, you will fully appreciate the wrist presence of the 42mm Monin 844 case. It's just fantastic, the shape of it. It's one of the greatest dive cases ever made. Right, so let's test the bezel execution. 120 click unidirectional bezel, as one would expect. It just sounds incredible. Nice, loud, audible clicks. Heavy, firm resistance to it. Much firmer than on a Seiko 5KX, which has a medium firm resistance to it. I love the loud, audible clicks. Feels nice and firm. Good, robust ratcheting mechanism. This really feels like a robust tool watch. It's got that military issued kind of feel to it. Rather like a CWC RN diver. Really heavy mechanism. You can feel the pressure of the spring, the click spring, beneath the 120 click grooves in the bezel engaging. Every single click feels heavy and solid. You've really got to grip it and give it a good turn. This isn't going to accidentally knock out of position. Feels even all the way through the 360 degrees, firm all the way. It doesn't feel lighter and tighter and then lighter again. It feels heavy all the way through the 360 degrees. This is sublime. It really is. I actually prefer the bezel action to my Rolex Submariner Date 16610, which I actually think has a bezel action which is very smooth and refined, but too light. This is heavier. It feels very satisfying. No lateral side-to-side play whatsoever. This is nice and tight. No back play whatsoever. Nice and tight again. Let's just check the alignment. I really like the loud audible clicks. They feel very heavy, but you can hear every single one of the 120 clicks. So satisfying to use. This is one of the most satisfying bezel executions I have experienced. I have reviewed hundreds of watches on my channel, and I can tell you this bezel execution just sounds good, feels good, everything about it. So we're now one click before, one more click. The loomed triangle is bang on the 12 o'clock index on the dial and the 60-minute tick on the chapter ring. Perfect alignment. This is 10 out of 10 bezel execution. It is just sublime. It is an example to other low-tier price point brands how to get it correct. This is €299. We're not looking at a high-tier piece costing in excess of €10,000 here, but that's the level of bezel execution we're looking at on a €299 low-tier piece. H.G.P deserve credit because this is some of the best bezel execution I have ever experienced on a dive piece. It's fantastic. So let's test the screw down crown execution. Solid 316L grade stainless steel crown, coin edge finished and sterile as I've detailed. Let's test unscrewing it. Silky smooth. This is sublime screw down crown execution. To put this into perspective, this is Rolex trip lock level. There's no discernible difference in the silky smooth action of this on my Rolex Submariner Date 16610. That is the level of sublime screw down crown execution. Just incredible. No friction whatsoever. There's a perfect interface between the internal thread of the stainless steel crown and the external thread of the stainless steel crown tube. 200 meters of hermetic seal. We have one rubber O-ring gasket inside the crown and a second rubber O-ring gasket inside the stainless steel crown tube. The tolerances in terms of the smoothness of the machining to the threads is sublime. Silky smooth. It's one of the best screw down crowns I have ever experienced. This Monin 844 case, the crown tube in it, is one of the best ever made. Just incredible. And this crown perfectly interfaces with it. So silky smooth. Now, the benefit of this being the quartz version rather than the automatic is there is no phantom date setting position because it's powered by the Seiko VH31 quartz. So, pulling it out to the first click position hacks the movement. If you look at the second hand, which ticks at 4 ticks per second, you can see it's now stopped dead. So it's possible to set the time precisely to the second with the Seiko VH31 quartz. Nice light resistance to it because it only has 2 joules, minimal friction to it, and the gearing meshes very well, so it feels silky smooth clockwise and anti-clockwise. Absolute pleasure all the way through the 12 hours. Now let's just see what it's like for backplay. There is some slight backplay. That's the thing to bear in mind. When you rotate the crown clockwise or anti-clockwise, there is some slack you have to take up in the gearing. So there isn't an immediate response. When I rotate the crown clockwise or anti-clockwise, you can see you have to take up the slack in the minute hand. It doesn't immediately respond. That's a characteristic of the Seiko VH31 quartz that you have to live with. In terms of backplay, it feels similar to an NH35A automatic. That's the kind of backplay we're talking about. It does take some getting used to, but once you've got used to taking up the slack, it's acceptable. Pushing it back in, it's got a nice positive click, and that restarts the movement. You can see the second hand begins to tick around the dial with the characteristic 4 beats per second or 4 ticks per second tick of the VH31. So it's rather like the smooth sweep of a 3 Hz automatic. Rather than it ticking at 1 tick every second, it has 4 ticks per second, which I actually prefer. Let's test screwing it back down. Instant thread pickup. There's a perfect pickup, a perfect interface between the internal thread of the stainless steel crown and the external thread of the stainless steel crown tube. Silky smooth, sublime. This could not be improved upon. The quality control, builds quality, tolerances, machining, materials. This screw down crown is one of the best I have ever experienced. It is the same quality as my Rolex Submariner Date 16610. This is a €299 low tier piece. We're not looking at a €10,000 plus high tier piece here, but that's the quality of the machining, the tolerances, the quality control. Could not be improved upon. H.G.P have the perfect screw down crown execution. Right, so let's do a Lume test and we'll see how the Lume performs when it's charged up to the absolute maximum. So as always, I'm going to use my 100 UV LED torch and charge it up to the absolute peak. Now I've got high expectations because this uses C3 superluminova, which is some of the best quality superluminova in the watch industry. BGW9 and C3 are the best. Right, so that's now fully charged, and as you can see, it has not disappointed. This has actually exceeded my expectations. Now, I'm pleased to report we're not looking at 5 to 6 layers. This H.G.P uses 7 layers on the printed dial, the handset, and also the triangle Lume pip on the aluminium bezel inset. 7 layers. So 5 to 6, to put this into perspective, 5 to 6 is the industry standard for optimum performance. This goes one better. This has 7 layers on the dial, the hands, and the triangle. Now you can clearly see the benefits of the additional layers, 7 full layers of C3. The exciter is glowing incredibly brightly. It's got a white tone to the exciter in the C3. And C3 is one of my personal favourites because it's got the characteristic green tone, rather like the tritium used in the 1970s and 1980s on the original H.G.P dive pieces. Tritium, of course, was radioactive, and therefore it was discontinued due to its radioactivity and succeeded by luminova, and then luminova was succeeded by superluminova. So C3 has the same green tone as tritium, but of course it's not radioactive, and unlike tritium, it doesn't patina and degrade with time, and therefore the performance stays optimum with time. 7 layers at €299. This is unprecedented. I have never seen a watch on my channel with 7 layers of C3 superluminova. Certainly not at €299. This is the kind of performance one would expect to see on a mid-tier piece costing in excess of €5,000 or a high-tier piece costing in excess of €10,000. To put this into perspective, it's the kind of performance one would expect to see on a Rolex Submariner Date, a Tudor Pelagos, or alternatively a Tudor Black Bay. These are pieces I have previously reviewed. That is the quality we're looking at. 7 layers. So as you can see, the exciter is continuing to glow brightly, and the colour tone match, the green tone on the loomed triangle, the printed indices and the handset all perfectly match. There's no colour tone mismatch in daylight, and there's no colour tone mismatch in the dark. Perfect green tone. The exciter is glowing incredibly brightly. Fantastic. 7 layers at this price point. Right, so let's discuss the movement used because it's one of my favourite aspects of the piece. So this uses the Seiko VH31 Mechaquartz. Now bear in mind, the H.G.P Diver 200 meter that we're looking at is also available in an automatic version, which is Seiko NH35A powered, but the negative of the NH35A version is it is slightly thicker. This is thinner at 12.1 millimeters. That's something to bear in mind if you want a low profile piece. 12.1 is very low profile for 200 meters due to having a flat sapphire crystal, flatter caseback than the automatic version, and the benefit is we've also got a very slender rehort, as you can see. The NH35A powered version has a thicker caseback and also a slightly deeper rehort. That's something to bear in mind. So, benefit of it being quartz powered is it's a very thin piece but also slender rehorts. The dial is close to the underside of the flat sapphire crystal, so legibility is good. It's made in Japan. The VH31 has been in service since 2015. So at this stage in 2025, it has 10 years service. So 10 years of proven reliability. The build quality, quality control, materials and accuracy are all outstanding. No negatives, no reliability issues reported whatsoever in the 10 years of service. It has 2 joules. It has hacking and a quick set date. It has hacking, but there's no date complication, which is beneficial in this case because there is no phantom date setting position. When you pull the crown out to the first click, it is the final click. Unlike the NH35A, there's no phantom date setting position. 2-year battery life is perfectly acceptable. The thing I like about the VH31 above all else is the accuracy. It is incredibly accurate. Plus or minus 15 seconds per month accuracy. Just think about that for a second. That's not plus or minus 15 seconds per day or per week. Plus or minus 15 seconds per month. Better than plus or minus 1 second per day accuracy. Outstanding. The other thing I like about it is the characteristic 4 ticks per second tick of the second hand. Unlike other quartz movements, it doesn't tick at 1 tick per second. So the second hand doesn't judder or stutter around the dial. It ticks at 4 ticks per second, which gives it a slightly smoother tick. It looks more like a 3 Hz sweep of an NH35A, for example, running at 21,600 vibrations per hour. So I like it. So I like that it's got that 4 ticks per second sweep or tick rather than having a 1 tick per second tick of usual quartz movements. And it's very accurate, very reliable. It's a robust movement and it is well proven. No negatives to it whatsoever. The build's quality, quality control, reliability are all good. Plus or minus 15 seconds per month is incredible accuracy. The correct choice of quartz movement at this price point, €299. Now, if you dislike the VH31 quartz, of course you can also have the automatic version of this piece, which is NH35A powered, but of course the negative is it has a thicker bubble back case back and the overall thickness is slightly thicker. I personally prefer this version, which is lower profile. 12.1 is very slender. So lastly, I'll summarise the piece. What do I think of it overall? Well, when I'm considering reviewing a watch on my channel, the watch meet 2 criteria. It should be both excellent quality and excellent value at the respective price point. So this is a low tier piece. The price point is €299. Yes, this is unquestionably excellent quality, and yes, it is unquestionably excellent value at €299. This cannot be beaten for €299. It is one of the best dive pieces. Made in France. It has a made in France 844 Monin case, which is iconic. 7 layers of C3, not 5 to 6, 7. The movement is accurate to plus or minus 15 seconds per month. Incredible accuracy. The bezel execution is one of the best I have experienced in hundreds of watches. The screw down crown execution is one of the best I've experienced. It is Rolex Submariner dates level. Silky smooth. No quality control issues. No build quality issues. The specification and the materials are loaded. It even has a genuine NSA beads of rice bracelet with solid milled NSA clasp, as you can see. Iconic. The Monin case is reason enough to justify the price point of this piece. The 844 Monin case is one of the greatest French-made dive piece cases ever made. Georges Monin created a masterpiece with the 844 Monin. It is one of the perfect dive watch cases, used by a plethora of brands including Hoya, CWC and H.G.P. So I like everything about it. I like this watch so much, in fact, I have decided to add it to my own personal collection, and that is the highest compliment I can pay a watch. I'm going to declare it a champagne watch for lemonade money. I'm going to highly recommend it to you for consideration. I hope you've enjoyed my review of the H.G.P Diver 200M Mechaquartz. Please feel free to post your own comments below the video. Thank you for watching.